and a big clear area on the floor. So go ahead, let's come on down to hands and knees. We're going to start with some cat and cow. You might be more comfortable orienting yourself to look towards the screen. I'm going to go sideways just so you can see the shape of my spine in this pose and the position of my hands and knees. So you're going to come down onto all fours, onto hands and knees, and you'll see that I have my pillow. I do recommend you have a pillow as well. Put that pillow underneath your knees because the floor can be hard, and your hands go directly beneath your shoulders. So you're down on all fours on hands and knees, heading underneath your knees, optional. I'm going to go one step further and curl my toes under because I do have that padding underneath my knees. I can curl the toes under, get that added toe stretch without my bony knees screaming too much. So from hands and knees, begin with an inhale. And as you exhale, press your breath out, pull your belly in, arch your back for cat pose. Inhaling for cow. And exhaling for cat. Let your spine wave back and forth. Moving slowly, breathing slowly. Letting your spine wave back and forth. And getting acquainted with what your body feels like this morning. And after 3 or 4 breaths, the muscles begin to release, the bones begin to settle in. We can begin to mix it up a little bit. So still with your toes curled under, the next time you exhale into that cat pose, hold the pose, but not your breath. Stay in cat pose. Keep your belly pulled up and against your spine. And then back your hips up towards your heels. Give yourself a little bit more toe stretch. Toes curled under, maybe reach back, make sure those pinky toes are tucked under as well. Maybe flare your heels out to the sides a little bit more so those pinky toes start to squeal, those little piggies. And then shift forward. Untuck your toes, point your toes backwards, big toes together, knees apart, back your hips up again. All the while you maintain that cat-like pose, belly pulled in against your spine, back is rounded. And shift forward, curl the toes under, pinky toes too, back up. Shift forward, untuck those toes, back up. And if you want more stretch on the top sides of your feet, you might have those blocks nearby for stability. Help extend your arms a little bit. Sitting back a little further over your heels onto the tops of your feet. And shift forward again. Hands and knees, toes curled under. Belly pulled in against your spine, back up. And shift forward. 3rd time, untuck those toes, shift backward. Again, I do recommend having those blocks ready to go because this 3rd time around, you might want to peel one knee up and then the other. Get a deeper stretch across the tops of your feet. You can continue to alternate, shifting your weight side to side, peel up one knee, then the other. Getting acquainted with your feet this morning. Whatever you're doing there with your feet, make it even. And once again, come back to hands and knees. You make sure you're shifted forward towards the front edge of your mat so that you have plenty of runway back behind you. Hands and knees, toes curled under once again. Inhale into your cow. Exhale into your cat pose. Pull your tummy in, tuck your tail under. And with your toes curled under, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle that right heel straight back. Press hard through that right heel, moving up into a calf stretch. Now lifting your heart, lifting your belly away from the floor will help you take weight out of your hands. If you have wrist issues, I do recommend coming up onto fingertips, taking those wrists off the floor completely. Pressing back through that right heel. And release. Other foot side. Stretching that left leg back, pressing back through the left heel. All the while that belly is pulled in against your spine. And release, switching again. Right leg back. Find the pocket, that right hip pocket. Roll it down towards the ground. Shift a little bit more weight towards the pinky toe side of the foot. And rolling through the ball of the foot towards the pinky toe side of the foot as you drop that right outer hip. And switch. Second verse, same as the first, pressing back through that left leg. And shifting weight towards that left pinky toe, dropping pocket change out of that left hip pocket. Belly pulled up against your spine the entire time. And release. You're going to switch again, taking that right leg back. Dumping the pocket change out of that right hip pocket. And then taking that right foot, swinging it across midline. Imagine there was a camera pointing up your backside. So preserve your modesty. Cross that right leg across midline. Pull in on that pelvic floor. Pull up on that belly. Now pivot on your toes. Pivot on the ball of that foot to drop the outer edge of that right foot down towards the ground. And release, reset, repeat. Left leg back. Dropping the left outer hip, sweeping across midline, dropping that hip a little bit more. Letting the pinky toe blade edge of that left foot come down towards the ground. And release. Third time's a charm. Right leg back. Belly pulled up. Again, be mindful of your wrists. Maybe come up onto fingertips. Right leg crosses midline. Letting that outer heel drop down towards the ground. Maybe taking your hands a little bit wider to help stabilize the situation a little bit more. And then you can play around with swinging your hips side to side. Wag your tail. So hands go wide to help you control this. Getting a little bit more outer hip stretch. And definitely recommend padding underneath your left knee for this one. And on across, repeat, second side, left leg back, dumping the pocket change, crossing midline, dropping the outer edge of the foot down to the ground, hands go wide, maybe swinging your hips side to side. Keep your belly pulled up, try to lift weight out of your hands. And reset. Back to hands and knees. Now this time, right foot comes forward. Right foot forward. Left knee is down on padding. As you take that right foot forward, go long, crawl that front foot forward a whole bunch. I still have my back toes curled under. If your arms aren't quite long enough to reach the floor, and keep your shoulders level at the same time, you might have those blocks. I'm going to demonstrate with blocks. Here they are. Blocks underneath your hands so that your shoulders are level. Again, that front foot sticking out further than any other point on your body. Coming into a nice low lunge. I got my back toes curled under. And if I'm feeling strong about this, I can push down into my blocks, pull my belly up into my body, lift the back knee off the ground. And pivot on the ball of the foot. And unstick the front toes. Let that back heel waggle side to side. You can also do this with the back knee down, waggling your hips side to side. So 2 variations there. Both variations have that front knee bent. And release. Let's switch sides. Left foot forward. I do recommend blocks underneath your hands. This is where 2 matching blocks is really handy. Back toes curled under. You can stay down on one knee, waggling your hips, letting that front foot swing side to side. Or if you power up, keep that back heel off the floor, unstick, waggle. Work at your intensity level. And release. Once again, right foot forward. Nice long lunge. Back toes curled up. Both hands are going to go to the inside arch side of the front foot. That front foot's going to wiggle wide out to the side. So you see the stride length I have here. I'm using up the full length of my mat. I'm even going a little wider than my mat. I've got 1 foot wandering off the side here. So go long and wide. Take up plenty of space. So you're nice, low, long and wide. Then you're going to come on down. Maybe putting your elbows on blocks. Maybe your elbows come to the floor. Get on down. And then for added entertainment value, you can shift your weight side to side. Unstick your toes. You can pivot on the ball of the back foot. Getting into those hips, working our way up the legs. And then bail out. Let's switch. Left foot's going forward. I got my right knee down on padding. I recommend you do the same. Blocks underneath the hands, blocks underneath the elbows. I have my back toe curled under, even though you're not able to see that right now. Back toe is curled under, just for that added toe stretch. And I'm swinging hips side to side. And now let's transition into a downward facing dog. So both hands and feet are on the same surface for down dog. My hands are fairly wide, at least a shoulder width, and maybe even a little bit wider. My fingers are turned out to the sides a little bit. As I step back into that downward facing dog. Take your feet wide, but do keep them on the mat with you. And let your hips swing side to side. Get up onto the balls of your feet. Let your heels swing side to side. You're prancing, you're dancing, you're pedaling in place. Head hangs heavy. So as you dance and prance and swing your hips from side to side, feel the stretch down the backs of your legs. Now, as you do this, if you want a little bit more stretch in your calves, you might bring the left foot to midline and take that right foot, split the toes on top of the heel. So I'm kind of doing big toe on one side, the other 4 toes on the other side of that heel. And I can use that right foot to press the left heel down. Just to give myself a little bit more calf stretch here. And release. Switching right foot center, left toes on that right heel, dragging it down towards the ground. And release both feet to the ground. Toes curled under as you rise up onto tippy toes. Knees come on down to the ground. And then sit back, or I should say come up to kneeling. Take a moment to roll out your wrists. So I've got my toes curled under. I've got my pinky toes curled under as well. This is what the side view looks like. Facing you, so you can see my hands a little bit more clearly. Again, those pinky toes are curled under. My heels are flared out to the sides. Take those wrists, roll them around. Big loopy circles. If sitting back over your heels is too intense, you can just definitely be kneeling or untuck your toes completely. Reverse the direction on those big loopy wrist circles. Do your best to keep breathing. And then bring your hands together, interlace your fingers, press your palms away. Shoulders shrug up, back, and down. Have a nice long neck. Wiggle your jaw, yawn. Maybe even lean into that spot between your shoulder blades. I know those little piggies are squealing, mine are. So if you need to bail out, go ahead, untuck those toes at any moment. And then release. Before you uncross your fingers, notice which finger is on top and then reweave your fingers so the other finger's on top and it feels funky. If you're doing it correctly, if it feels weird. Pressing your palms out, shoulders down, belly pulls in, leaning into that spot between your shoulder blades. Maybe yawning. And then release, bail out. Coming on up to that downward facing dog. Flip the toes of one foot backwards and press down on the top side of that foot. I recommend only one foot at a time for this one. And then switch feet. Fingers are spread wide, even turned out to the sides a little bit. So the outer rims of your armpits can wrap around toward your face. Switch your feet again. Outer rim of your armpits turned towards your face so that you can check whether or not you put on deodorant this morning. Switch your feet. All right, let's come on into a lunge once again. Right foot forward, left knee definitely on padding for this one. Right foot forward with your blocks. Left knee down on some padding. Nice long stride between your feet. Front foot's gonna go wide. Have those blocks ready to go. Shoulders back, chest lifted, lifting your heart up. Driving your hips forward. Make sure you inch that front foot forward enough so the toes stay out past the knee. And then back it up and switch. Right knee on padding, left foot forward. Nice long length and some width between your feet. Lifting your chest up. And release. All right, right foot forward again. We're going to be going for a quadricep stretch. So for this one, you can either reach back with the opposite hand or the same hand, it doesn't matter which. Reach back there and try to grab a hold of that foot. Now that's not going to work for everybody. So if reaching back to grab a hold of that foot isn't working for you this morning, you can do the variation where you come on down, kind of lie on your side or sit on this hip and then reach back, grab that foot. Okay. So accommodate that however you must this morning. Again, the intermediate to advanced version is with some padding underneath that left knee. And you reach back, grab a hold of that foot, drag the heel in towards your butt. Do your best to breathe. And release, switch sides. If you're lying down on your side, just kind of roll over to the other side and switch. left foot forward, reaching back, taking hold of that right foot. Again, you can do around one side or around the other side. It doesn't matter which hand you use to grab hold of that foot, whichever side works for you. Go for that quadricep stretch. And release. All right, we're gonna have a seat and continue stretching those quadriceps. You're gonna take your 2 blocks, stack them like a birthday cake, a layered cake. Take those stacked blocks and set them down on your mat. And then you're gonna put your heels on either side of those blocks. You can also have your knees on padding. So let me show you the rear view. I've got my knees together, my thighs are together. My heels, ankles are on either side of the blocks. My toes point straight back. To help me bend my knees a little deeper, I'm going to take the meat on my calves and roll it out to the sides. I'm not letting my heels waggle. I'm taking the meat, the calf, and rolling it wide. Trying not to let those heels spill out to the side, keeping those heels embracing the block. So calf muscles go wide, heels stay narrow as you sit down on those blocks. Okay? And then sit bones go wide. So I'm not sitting on my heels, I'm sitting between my heels. Toes are pointing straight back. I can actually wiggle my toes at you. And this is a Thunderbolt Pose or Hero Pose, Virasana, V-I-R, asana. That's what the rear view looks like. Some of you might be able to come down to 1 block or no blocks, or maybe just a little bit of cushion between your heels. I'm going to demonstrate up on a pair of blocks, having that seat. So that arms are free. Once again, interlace your fingers, press your palms up, overhead this time. Shoulders down, head on, level and straight. So this is Virasana Hero Pose. It's all about restricting the blood flow into your legs to help wring your legs out, kind of like you're squeezing out a dirty old sponge. So compressing the tissues in your legs, squeezing the juice out of them, letting all that juice, that fluid pool in your organs, but keeping yourself awake by pressing your palms up towards the ceiling. This is a stress position in the arms in case you haven't noticed. And that's going to keep your heart beating a little faster. Helps counteract the relaxation response that the lower body is trying to induce. All right, elbows bend, hands come behind your head, big chesty breaths. Breathing, breathing, breathing. And release. Clasp your hands behind your back, interlacing your fingers. Do a shoulder shrug up, back, and down. Skid your thumbs down your tailbone as you squeeze your shoulder blades together. Notice how your chest wants to stick out. Then find your front ribs, find your belly, pull them in against your spine. So your spine stays neutral. Try not to go sway back. Big chesty breaths across your collarbones. Heads on, level and straight. And release. Make sure you're sitting on enough height because we're going to be here for a few more moments. Inhale, both arms go up. You're going to bend that right elbow, give yourself a pat on the back. Use that left hand to plug that right arm bone into socket. So plug it in, shorten it, plug it in, and then drag it behind your head. Front ribs and belly pull in. Trying to stay neutral in your spine. Heads on straight. Still breathing. Nice deep breath. And release. Feel the blood flow back into your arms. It's going to feel so good when it flows back into your legs. But first we have to do the other arm. Arms come up, bending that left elbow. Give yourself a pat on the back. Use that right hand to plug that left arm into socket. Pull it behind your head. Keep your head on straight. Pull your front ribs and belly back into your body, keeping your spine neutral. And breathing. feel the muscle that's stretching on the backside of your arm right now. That's the tricep. So we're going to come into downward facing dog, and it's going to feel so good. But I want you to pay attention to this tricep area on your arm, because this tricep is going to be turning towards your face like you're checking deodorant. So let's come into that downward facing dog. Fingers spread wide. I'm kicking my blocks out of the way. Fingers spread wide. Locate those triceps, backside of your arm. And when you come into that downward facing dog, put a slight bend in your elbows and wrap those triceps around towards your face. Knees can bend, heels can lift, sit bones can lift. So bend your knees, lift your heels, and stick your butt out so that your sit bones are sharp and pointy. And wrap those triceps around towards your face. With your elbows unlocked, those triceps wrapped around towards your face, you can further engage your upper body as if you're shoving your thumbs towards each other, and feel that upper body turn on. Front ribs and belly pull into your body, trying to keep that neutral spine. Gravity's trying to pull your rib cage towards the ground. Lift your rib cage, lift your ribs away from the floor. Knees bent, heels lifted, sit bones sharp and pointy as you press your inner thighs back hard. Now, the harder you push your inner thighs back, the more your chest wants to collapse. So you got to keep those ribs pulled up away from the floor, those triceps wrapped around towards your face, your thumbs shoving towards one another, your chest muscles working. And you still breathe, and you keep those front ribs pulled in against your spine. Your low back is long, and your knees are bent, and your sit bones are sharp and pointy, and you're still breathing. And you want even more sweat, even more heat in the body, bend your elbows even more generously, but then wrap those triceps in around towards your face. So elbows are narrow. So what the front view looks like. We turn sideways real quick so you can see what the side view looks like. My knees are bent, my heels are lifted, and those triceps are wrapped around towards my face as I bend the elbows. Some people call this one turbo dog. I wonder why. All right, come on down. Ooh, take a moment. Maybe shake those arms out. I'm gonna come back up into that turbo dog just to build some heat in the upper body. Tone those arms a little bit more. So in this turbo dog, yes, you are bending your elbows almost down to the floor completely. So if you want to take a quick moment and have a look, see what it looks like. So same thing, I measure off for a downward facing dog. I pull my front ribs and belly into my body, trying to keep that neutral spine. Press my thighs back, knees bent, heels lifted. Sit bones sharp and pointy, thighs are pressing back hard, elbows unlocked, triceps wrapped around towards my face, thumbs shoving towards one another. Upper body is alive. So come on up and join me. Turn on that turbo dog. Heels lifted, knees bent, sharp, pointy sit bones, thighs pushing back hard, elbows unlocked, armpits wrapped around towards your face, thumbs shoving towards one another, and you're breathing. And come on down. Go ahead, leave those toes curled under. Why not? Come on up, fan out those wrists. Maybe sit back over your heels. Big loopy circles the other way. And then put your hands down. Spin your fingers around to point towards your knees. Spin your fingers around towards your knees. Put a bend in your elbows and feel that stretch go up your forearms. So elbows bend. You got to shift your weight forward, which feels good for your feet if you shift your weight forward, so that you can bend your elbows, keep a bend in your elbows. You only get to shift your weight back towards your heels so far as you can go with your elbows staying unlocked. The moment you lock out your elbows, you're going to lose the stretch. Elbows stay slightly bent. And stay here. You can lift your head up and have a look at the screen while I do this. Maybe shift your weight a little side to side, play around with this stretch, get used to it, because I'm going to come back into a turbo dog while you continue to stretch, and you can watch. Here I am, knees bent, heels lifted, thighs pressing back hard. I'm stretching out nice and long in my spine, letting those arms come into socket, armpits wrap around towards my face, fingers spread wide, thumbs shove in, and I'm going to bend those elbows down to hover. just a millimeter off the ground. Head is down for this one. So come on up and join me. I get to look at you do it now. Come on into your downward facing dog with your head down. And then turn that into your turbo dog just to really get that upper body warmed up. Because I got plans for you. Again, your knees are bent, your heels are lifted, your thighs are pressing back the whole time. The harder back you can press your thighs, the less weight you'll be bearing on your hands. And then when you've had enough of that, come on down and get your blocks. You can be lying on your belly. And if you're bony and you know it, you can put those pillows underneath your hip bones. Have your blocks out here in front of you. So you're gonna lie on your tummy. Perhaps your hip bones are on a pillow and you got your block. Just make that lower body happy. You got your block here and you're gonna be putting your elbows up on the block and have that second block handy. And put both elbows up on the block. And when you put both elbows up on the block, thumbs point out to the sides and you tuck those elbows in narrow. Thumbs out to the side, tuck those elbows in narrow. This is the position you're going for. This is what the front view looks like. Your challenge is to push your thumbs wide. So if you keep your chest up, you can push your thumbs wide. The moment you start to melt your heart, drop your head, your hands will want to slam together. So if you're having a difficult time getting your thumbs to push out to the side, you're having a difficult time preventing your fingers from slamming together, you can take that block and maybe put that block between your pinky fingers. Some of you might be able to put that block wide between your pinky fingers. Can you do that and relax your butt? Okay. And then breathe. And you might begin to soften, not only your butt, but your back and your heart and your chest. And maybe your head does start to sink down. And there's really no good place for your head. You might end up with your head resting on your arms. Got the block in just the right spot. Maybe your nose can kind of poke down between your arms. Feeling that strong shoulder stretch and keep checking in with your butt. Keep relaxing your booty. Relax your toes. Relax your jaw. Keep on breathing. And then to come out of this, lift your heart, lift your head, lift your chest. And then you can release. Oh. Hands come beneath your shoulders, shoulders shrug up off your back. Elbows come narrow once again, chin tucks, chest tucks, belly lifts as you back it up into your child's pose. Big toes together, knees apart, hips back on your heels for that child's pose. All right, downward facing dog. Knees bend, heels lift, inner thighs press back, perky, sharp, sit bones sticking out, front ribs, belly pull up into your body, trying to find that neutral spine, no saggy midsections. Arms are in socket, elbows unlock, armpits, triceps wrap around towards your face, thumbs shove towards one another, turbo dog activate. Big breaths, head hanging, feeling strong. Gonna rise up onto those tippy toes even more. Pull that belly and feel like a wave move through your spine as you pull your belly up. Shift your body forward, coming to the top of a push-up. And then knees bend, push your hips back, and have a seat. We're going for a wave-like motion through the spine. So I'm moving this pillow out of the way for you, moving all the clutter out of the way. I'll demonstrate this one a couple times. So as you're sitting back over those heels, you can be stretching those toes again. You've been fanning your fingers out again. You can do a wrist stretch. You can do an overarm thing. You can play around with your arms. Just watch the demo. Okay. That's the third time you've been in that position. I think you can find something to do. In a moment, you'll be here in a downward facing dog. Knees bent, heels lifted. All this stuff is engaged. And then you're going to rise up on the tippy toes, pull your belly and see this wave kind of rolling through my body, finishing with my head. And I'm shoving forward onto the tips of my toes. So my boobs are dangling directly over my thumbs. We're going to do that. But first, you get to stand up. Because finding this wave-like motion standing up might work a little better the first time you do it this morning. Or maybe the second time you do it this morning. I'm going sideways so you get the lovely profile view once again. My knees are bent, my feet are apart. I'm going to find this lower belly. Go ahead, put a hand on it. It's like you're zipping up tight pants, okay, without squeezing your butt. So drop it like it's hot, keep it relaxed, keep it jiggling. And then you can even kind of pull the front of your leggings up, like you're zipping up tight pants, pulling on tight leggings, dredging, dragging up that lower belly. And release. So that's what the side view looks like. Pulling it in and dropping. Pulling it in and dropping. Sometimes it helps if you touch yourself or just kind of flap your fingers in front. I think sometimes if I had a really short cheerleader skirt on and I was trying to flip the skirt up in the front without using my hands. So that little lower belly lift, that little flip of the skirt towards the front. Okay. So again, you can touch or you can flip. But as you do this, your knees are bent, your feet are apart. Also helps to pull in a little pelvic floor contraction. You know where your Kegel muscles are. You're pulling up, and you can let it drop. You're pulling up, and you're letting drop. Trying to do this with the Kegel muscles, the lower abs, not so much the butt. So again, back to the side. You keep doing this, keep doing this, keep doing this. This movement is all in one plane. You are not shifting your hips forward and back. You're not doing your Pee Wee Herman dance. Okay, you're not humping away. It's lower belly lifting, dropping, lifting, dropping, lifting, dropping. Okay, that's the initiation for that body roll. So this lifts up, and then midsection pulls in, front ribs pull in, like you're getting tickled. And then you continue feeling that wave roll through your body. So let's come on down to hands and knees once again. And try pulling in there and then rolling into your plank pose. So hands and knees, toes curled under, fingers spread wide, coming on up into the downward facing dog, turbofying it. So put a bend in those elbows, wrap those armpits around towards your face, shove your thumbs towards one another. Keep those knees bent, your heels lifted, press your inner thighs back, stretch your spine nice and long, pull those front ribs in. Arms plug into socket, feeling strong and stable and secure in the upper body so that you can bend your knees a little bit more. Find that lower belly. And as you exhale, pull in that lower belly, pull in those middle ribs, pull in those lower ribs, shift your body all the way forward to the top of that plank pose. Up on your tippy toes, chest advancing forward. Then knees bend and sit back. And up into your downward facing dog. And rise to tippy toes, turbofy that dog as you exhale, belly roll and tuck and shift forward to the top of that plank pose. And then bend your knees, back your hips up into downward facing dog. And rise to tippy toes, exhale, do that belly roll, shift forward, top of a push-up. Knees bend, hips press back, almost a down dog again. And rise to tippy toes. Exhale, pull that belly and roll forward. Bend your knees, almost like you're going back to child's pose, but then you're not. You're turning into a downward facing dog. And we're doing it one more time. Rise to tippy toes. Exhale, shift your body weight forward. Come to the top of that push-up. And if you're feeling really strong, you can take that right foot on top of the left and press that left heel back as you press your chest forward. So stretch your chest forward, try getting your boobs over your thumbs, at the same time press that heel back. And then you can bend both knees, uncross your feet, back up into downward facing dog, because we got to do that one more time to be even. Exhale, rise to tippy toes, shift your body weight forward. Come to that plank, maybe move the right foot more towards center, left foot goes on top of the right foot. As you stretch that right heel back, pull your chest forward. And then both knees bend. And you bail out. Child's pose, big toes together, knees apart. Hips back on your heels. Walk your hands towards your lap. Padding underneath your knees if you like. This time, you're going to take the back of your hand onto the ground. Back of your hand on the ground. Fingers point towards your knee. Back of your hand down on the ground. Shifting your weight forward so you can bend your elbows and then spin those elbow pits to face forward. So that's what the side view looks like. I'm trying to keep a bend in my elbows. They might look straight to you, but they feel bent to me. This is what the front view looks like. I'm spinning those elbow pits to face forward. I'm showing you my veins. I'm trying to keep those elbows unlocked. Do whatever you want to do with your toes. The more you lift your chest away from the ground, the less weight you'll have on the back of those hands. You can even play around with kind of shifting right to left. Big wrist stretch. Front ribs and belly pull into your body. And then shifting forward so that you can release. Oh, spin out of that one. Flare those fingers. Roll those wrists around. We got a lot of upper body stuff going on. Should be feeling pretty warm in that upper body because we're going to be coming into a dolphin pose and then some variations on dolphin pose. So dolphin pose is a downward facing dog, everything that we've just been doing all along, but with your elbows down on the ground completely. So it's like you take that turbo dog and then you finally get to put the elbows down, but you keep everything active. I know your first instinct as soon as you put those elbows down would just be to sag and relax because turbo dog's hard. As soon as you get those elbows down, you want to resist that temptation to release all the activity. So we're going to start with the elbows down and add the activity in, just so that you figure out how to regain it should you let it drop. So we're going to do this a few times. The first time we're doing it though, you're going to be putting your elbows down on the ground and you want to get those elbows in narrow. So I've got my thumbs pointing out to the sides and I'm tucking the thumb sides of my elbows in as narrow as I can. And this is for a good reason. The narrower I can take my elbows, keep my elbows narrow, the more likely that my head will not be pile driving into the floor. My elbows go wide, my head's definitely going to touch the ground. I can keep my elbows narrow, I'm less likely to have my head on the floor. You don't want to hurt your neck. So elbows go in narrow, stick that elbow skin wide, and then you can clasp your hands together. If you take that bottom pinky finger, tuck it in, you get two pinky finger bones down on the ground. Toes curled under. Exhale, pull in those front ribs like your cat pose. Lift your hips up for your down dog variation. Take your feet as wide apart as the mat. Bend your knees, lift your heels, press those inner thighs back. Let those sit bones be sharp and pointy. And then regain control of those front ribs like you're getting tickled. Maybe do that little belly roll action, pull in that pelvic floor, pull in the lower belly, pull in those front ribs, but keep relaxing your head, letting those arm bones plug into the shoulder joints. There's really no good place for your head, but we've been in this position before, you'll be fine. Keep breathing. Maybe you end up with your forehead resting on your upper arms somewhere. Even though your hands are clasped together, can you kind of relax them? That's not a white knuckle death grip thing. Your hands are just interlaced, relaxing. And then come on down and release. So whatever interlace you did with your fingers, that's your habitual natural way of interlacing your fingers. We got to repeat it and do it again. with your fingers interlaced the funky way. So just throw your hands together, and whatever they do naturally, do the opposite of that. Elbows come in narrow. Try getting those thumb sides of the elbows tucked in as narrow as possible. And then when you go to put your hands together, now you're thinking about it, recross, put the other finger on top. Tuck the other pinky finger in underneath. Shoulders shrug away from your ears, toes curled under. Lift your hips up into your dolphin pose, dolphin dog. So feet go as wide apart as your mat. You bend your knees, lift your heels, press your inner thighs back, stretch your spine nice and long. Pull in that lower belly, pull in the front ribs, even have that kegel pulled in. Let those arm bones drop into your shoulders. Let your head hang. Again, you might end up with your forehead resting gently, almost weightless on something. Please, you're not feeling any compression in your neck at all. Elbows as narrow as you can keep them, arms plugged into socket, armpits wrapping around towards your face. Even though your hands are together, you're still trying to wrap those armpits towards your face. Knees are bent, heels are lifted, perky backside, lower belly pulled in, front ribs pulled in, continually scanning, checking, rechecking, correcting. And then come on down. What is this, the fourth, fifth time we've sat back over the heels and rolled out those wrists? Go ahead and go for it. Okay. Now, depending on where you are in your life, in your house, where your belongings are in your house, this is up to you. I'm out here in the backyard. I'm really not going to hurt anything other than myself, maybe with the shade structure, if I really go crazy. If you've got bony elbows and they're starting to talk to you, you can double up your yoga mat. You can fold it back, give yourself even more thickness. I do not recommend putting your elbows on something soft and squishy though, that will slide. You don't want anything sliding and moving around on you. So if your elbows are starting to feel bony, you're going to be putting even more weight on them, consider doubling up your yoga mat. I'm going to put my elbows right here on this extra thick edge, and I'm actually better on screen here. So I would put all this at the end of your mat. I'm doing it right here just to be on camera. So elbows go narrow. I stick my elbows in. I clasp my hands together. I figure out the interlace of my fingers. I tuck that pinky finger in. I get those shoulders shrugged away from my ears, toes curled under, hips lift up. My feet are actually going to step off my yoga mat for a few moments here, but for you, I do want you to do this with your feet on the mat. I want you to be in control at all times. I don't want your mat sliding across the floor. Heels lifted, knees bent, pressing those inner thighs back. You're still just watching here. Pulling in that pelvic floor, pulling in those front ribs. Arms are in socket, armpits wrapped around towards your face. And then you can bring one foot narrow and play around with lifting a leg up. You're just lifting, inner thigh up. Can you do this without your upper body going anywhere? Notice I am not kind of collapsing into a back bend, trying to keep my spine neutral and straight. I'm just lifting and lowering the leg. I'm not throwing it. So I showed you mine, you get to show me yours. So again, for safety's sake, do as I say, not as I do. Be at the front edge of your mat, have padding underneath your elbows, have your feet on the mat with you as you do this, because you want to maintain control. Fingers interlaced, pinky finger tucked in, downward facing dog, turbofying that dolphin dog, everything turned in, armpits wrapped around towards your face, front ribs belly pulled in, stepping the right foot in narrow if you like, lifting that left leg up. Just playing around with lifting the leg up without letting your ribs go anywhere. And then switching legs, switching sides. As you do this, relax your fingers, relax your jaw. Maybe notice what's going on with the weight distribution in your shoulders. Maybe switch again if you like, if you're feeling strong enough to do that. Notice if the weight stays even in both shoulders. That's a good sign. Whatever you're doing, finish it up, make it even on both sides. And when you've absolutely had enough of that, you get to bail out. And once again, sit back. Maybe this time you shrug your shoulders a few times. Fan your fingers. Work up a good yawn. So good lower body control. When you were in that pose, you were able to maintain even weight distribution on both shoulders. You didn't feel your weight slosh from side to side. That's a very good sign. You can do that work without the weight shifting in your shoulders. Just to have the awareness of your shoulders in the first place is kind of like intermediate level. But to be able to control your weight distribution so that you don't feel the weight shifting from shoulder to shoulder, that's like advanced right there. That's a foundation for going upside down. Since we're at home, we're not supervised, and you don't have a spotter, you don't get to go upside down right now with me. Hopefully your shoulders are feeling enough from that anyway. Maybe clasp your hands together behind your back, give them a good squeeze, big chesty breath. Front ribs tucked in. You can be sitting down on your heels if that works for you. Otherwise, you can be kneeling. Heads on straight. Neutral spine. And release. All right. Have a seat. I'm going to sit on my 2 blocks. One block for either butt cheek. Sitting on blocks, just so that I could sit up nice and tall. Maybe even covering the blocks with the pillow, give yourself even more of a pedestal to sit upon. Sitting simple cross-legged, one shin in front of the other. Sit bones wide. Sit on enough stuff that your hip bones are higher than your knee bones and your thigh bones slant down. Your knees don't have to touch the floor. If you're feeling unsteady or nervous about your knees, you can tuck something underneath your knees just to give yourself that sense of security. But as long as your thighs are angling down away from your hips, you're probably going to be fine. Palms forward, shoulder shrug, inhale up. Exhale back and down. Keep your palms forward, repeat. Great big shoulder shrug, inhale up. Exhale back and down. One more time, great big shoulder shrug, great big yawn, inhaling up. Exhale back and down. Inhale, take both arms up and overhead. Cross that right arm on top and give yourself a big hug. So right arm is on top, shoulders down, fingers creep down below your armpits and wrap around to your back ribs. So fingers are below your armpits and they're wrapping around to your back ribs, shoulders down away from your ears. You can tick-tock your head side to side, maybe wiggle your jaw, yawn. And then if it works for you, probably get those arms crossed pretty tight. You're gonna take that bottom arm, your left arm, flip it up, wrap the top arm around it. We usually do this pose, this arm position, as a prep for things like down dog, but notice what it feels like after doing all of that turbo dog and dolphin dog. Maybe your elbows cross a little tighter than usual. Maybe your hands actually touch. As your shoulders drop away from your ears, work on having a nice long neck. Maybe tick-tock your head side to side. Wiggling your jaw, yawning. Check in with your torso. Maybe tuck those front ribs in a little bit. Pull in that lower belly. Relax your butt. Take a little deeper breaths into those back ribs. Now, I should have mentioned if your hands weren't touching, you could do this with a belt in your hands. I know this group is really loose and experienced, and so I think most of you are probably doing this without a belt. And then release. Oh, palms forward, big shoulder shrug, big yawn. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Big inhale, both arms up. And this time that left arm goes on top as you give yourself a big hug. Shoulders drop down, fingers below your armpits, wrapping up nice and tight. Tick-tocking your head, wiggling your jaw, maybe even yawning. Stay here, or if you like, you can wrap your arms up with or without that belt. Elbows pressing forward, waistline pulling back, and just noticing if those upper arms cross a little further than usual. Sometimes if we've been carrying tension in a part of our bodies, for instance, like your hips or your lower back, and it's painful and sore, you try to shift the weight out of that area and carry it elsewhere. You make a secondary place sore. If you've been favoring your lower back or your one hip over the other, or trying to carry some of the weight of your hips in your shoulders, this might feel like a bit of a relief here. And release. Let's do to the lower body that very same stretch to the lower body that we just did with the upper back and shoulders. But first, you're going to lie down. Have your toys nearby, maybe have that pillow underneath your head, and join me down on the ground. Knees come in towards your chest as you rock your hips side to side. And then come to neutral. Drop that left foot down, cross the right leg over. Right leg crossed over, you can take your left hand to that right knee, pull that right knee across a little bit further. Invite that left leg in behind it. Maybe reach up with your free hand to that other knee and have your arms extended and your legs crossed, right on left, left on right. If you have long enough arms, you might work your hands down to your ankles, sliding your hands down your shins toward your ankles. And then breathe into that lower back and take giant breaths. Maybe your shoulders are relaxed enough that you can put your shoulders back down on the ground. Maybe you can get your shoulders away from your ears. Release that left foot back down. Release that right leg back on top. So we're still on the same side. Left foot down, right leg crossed over. Now this left foot, we got acquainted with the feet earlier. Find the inside edge of the outside edge of that foot. As you tick-tock side to side. So my left foot stays down on the ground, and I'm going to roll from the inside edge to the outside edge of that foot. Back and forth, right? Inside edge, outside edge, tick-tocking. As I do this, I tend to travel. I tend to slide. So I'm going to hold onto my pillow. And my hips tend to kind of creep and crawl towards my heel. You might find yourself getting a little bit more compact as you do this. I have to bring that pillow along with me as I do it. Tick-tocking side to side. And good twist, lower back, hip stretch, releasing that lower back and outer hips, just in case when you were doing your planks. We did a fair amount of planking and core stabilization today, just in case you were squeezing your lower back and your butt. This is definitely going to help stretch that area out. you're liking this stretch in your lower back and you want even more, the more you pull that tummy in, pull that pelvic floor and squeeze your thighs closed, activate your ab muscles, the more stretch you'll get. And if you're like me, you're going to come to neutral and you're going to have to reset. I have to kind of inchworm, sit up, reset all the way back toward the top of my mat so that I can do the other side. So knees bent, feet flat. The right foot goes down first, the left leg crosses over. Right hand reaches up to take hold of that left knee, give it a hug. Left hand to right knee, right hand to left knee. Hug everything in towards your chest. Again, if you have long enough arms, loose enough legs, you might be able to reach down on, hold on to your ankles. Don't go past your ankles. Let your feet stay free. Check in with your upper body, your shoulders, your jaw. Find your breath. And then that right foot releases back down. That left leg stays crossed over. I need to hold on to my pillow because I tend to travel. And let those knees tick-tock side to side. Really pulling out that lower back. Twisting and releasing. Anything that might have gotten jammed up. My Tuesday yoga for abs classes are starting again in October. So if your back is really talking to you, you probably need to work on your abs a little bit more. If you want to figure out how to do a Kegel, you can come to my Tuesday class. No matter how good this feels, you don't want to spend 20 minutes doing this. If it's so tight and it just feels like, oh gosh, it just needs a half an hour of back and forth here, don't do half an hour. It's like running a marathon with no training. You don't want to do that. You'll overdo it. It is possible to overdo some of this yoga stretching stuff. So you only want to do a couple minutes, a dozen or so breaths, and then come back and repeat tomorrow. You brush your teeth a little bit every day. You don't spend 3 hours brushing once a month. Okay? So it's kind of like maintenance. Coming to neutral. Take a moment with your feet apart, toes turn in, knees lean in together, coming into this constructive rest pose. Let the weight of your thigh bones sink down deep into your hips and lower back. Find deep belly breaths. Please begin to wiggle your fingers and toes, wiggle your jaw, wiggle your nose, stretching, moving, even yawning. Start to make your way over onto one side.